Welcome to the Lovecars On the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiffany Dell, and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to episode 11 of Lovecars on the Road, and I think we start off this motoring roundup podcast with some pretty awful news, actually, and that is in the MotoGP. Tiff, we can both relate to this very much, being fathers, being parents, but I think anyone can anyway.
Yeah, we all look at these, these especially the Moto3 kids, and we love their racing, but it is a dangerous, dangerous sport. And we had this awful accident just in the qualifying, this 19-year-old Swiss kid, Jason Dupasquier, he fell. And this is the worst thing about motorbikes, is getting hit by another bike. They have these amazing airbags in their leathers now. They have these horrendous crashes on their own, which we can't believe 99 times out of 100, they jump up and dust themselves off. But this poor kid, he fell in front of another bike and got hit. The worst thing in a way was that the Moto3 race went ahead. Well, they still didn't know his condition. He was in hospital, but they announced his death before the MotoGP race on the grid, and so all the MotoGP riders, were very tearful. Francesco Bagnaia, the Italian, didn't want to race, and this is an awful thing, I think, whether it's rallying or, even there was that rally in Australia, wasn't there? 2 fatalities in it, a sort of friendly rally down in Australia last week. And it's that huge question whether you continue. And I always think as a competitor, that if it happened to me, I wouldn't want to stop a race, we're down there, so, just get on with it. But obviously it's quite hard to ride a bike, when you're distressed having heard that news. So terrible tragedy. The Moto3 race went ahead because they didn't know at that stage, our Pedro Acosta, our little kid that we're all raving about, who won the early races. He didn't win this one. In fact, because Mugello's is amazing over 8th. Well, he's actually finished 7th and then got dropped paces. Track limits, even in Moto happens. He dropped back. But the Mugello, they have these races. I think he was 10th on one lap and then he led the next lap. And he went by 9 riders because the slipstream down Mugello's is a massive attack at the first corner. But he didn't get it right this time. He's been sensational at sort of making his moves at the right time. But he ended up 8th, one place behind John McPhee, who actually finished 9th on the road but got promoted with the track limits. So at least John finished another race without hitting the tarmac. Won by an Italian, Dennis Foggia. So a bit of a hometown hero won the Moto3 race. Moto2, our other place, we got a couple of Brit Samlos again. Sam always tries so hard, qualified second, after those early couple of victories. It was chasing for the lead, but the front folded under him at about 120 miles an hour or something horrendous.
Another big crash there as well.
Oh, but he got up, just so distraught that he dropped it. Jake Dixon still recovering from that crash that gave him a bit of concussion a few weeks back. He qualified 22nd. It was wet in qualifying. He got up to 14th, so at least he finished. The MotoGP race was dominated by Fabio Quartararo. I'm always getting that name right now. There's so many Araros at the end. But he pretty much dominated. It's the same as last season. Fabio went out, looked like he was just going to dominate the whole year, and then had this arm pump problem and faded. So looking like he's stronger and stronger, and now a very big challenge to win.
So do you think he's going to carry that through? Is it going to last?
I think this year. I think he's got his arm pump sorted, and he's going to. I think he will win it this year. He seems to be a real talent. Has a weird way of riding. He's got amazing use of the rear brake to help traction and braking, and the way they use these bikes is just phenomenal. The stuff that's going on,
and some of them will have their foot. They literally have their foot down. Others won't put their foot down. It's
waving.
Amazing.
And of course, that's the thing about MotoGP. What's so exciting is you can see the human being, and why it's so dangerous as well. The human being is so exposed. You can see what they're doing on the bikes and the stuff they get away with. So good win for him. It was sad, Mugello's Valentino Rossi's, home hero place. I can remember him winning, and the whole hilltop was the valet area of spectators, all in yellow with the number 46. He qualified 19th and he got up to 10th. He had a fair race. But, I was thinking before the race, when I saw he qualified 19th, that maybe he should retire at Mugello in front of his fans, because there weren't many. I don't think there were any fans there, I think, in the end. But I think Valentino needs to make an announcement. And I mean,
so.
he just loves racing. He's a
Yeah.
kid that he's still a child in there, just loves to race. But, you know, it is so dangerous. And we've had this, you know, reality check, you know, with poor Swiss kid. And, you know,
Jason, yeah. Awful.
Love Valentino. But maybe the time has come, Valentino.
What about Superbikes? Yeah, Estoril.
Yeah. Britain's dominate. No Britons at all in MotoGP, but you know, Jonathan Ray and Scott Redding both had a win again at Estoril, and they're getting in trouble now. The British domination. He's been challenged from the very unlikely country of Turkey, and I don't like to know if I'd like to be a commentator when Toprak Razgatlioglu won one of the 3 races, and he's been challenging them greatly. So we do have a Turkish challenge to our British superbike domination.
Yeah, rather than me saying that when they're overtaking for the lead, good for him. I'll hopefully he's got a nickname as well.
Yes, I'm sure he must have.
What about lots happening in the bikes, and obviously dominated for us. Feel a bit sort of somber this morning talking about the death as well. But over to America, plenty of action over there. Well, was it action? Indy 500 was plenty of action, which I really enjoyed watching. Such a razzmatazz and all the stars and stripes and fireworks and all sorts going on. But
the
what's
Americans
the fireworks on the track?
No, sadly not in there, but it was good. But no, it's Memorial Day as well, so it's like you know, November the 11th, and so you know, they have this massive military parading, and the Americans do it well. You know, they're very big Christian believers. They have the Lord's Prayer and the national anthem, and their jets fly over. And at Indy, it's done even bigger than at every other circuit. So massive build-up, tremendous atmosphere. I know it was still a stunning race, you know, to see, but almost too early in the race, the commentators said about, you know, he's on fuel saving. And a bit like in Formula One, I think, you know, like tyre saving, you always don't tell the public sometimes. We don't want to know the details. But they stopped so often at Indy. And early on, we had the kids out front, didn't we? We had Rinus VeeKay and Colton Herta, these 2 youngsters, almost, you know, wanting their moment of glory out front. But the wise heads at the back were sitting in the big slipstream in 10th or 11th place, saving fuel. And it is very much a feature of it. They stop so often, it seems, of fuel. It seems like they run out every 10 laps. It almost feels like Connor Daly led, and he's got an Air Force sponsorship. He comes from Indianapolis. You could hear the crowd, massive, you know, 150,000 crowd. And you actually hear them on the television. Then when a new leader came to the fore that they loved, you could hear the cheer. But of course, it was pit stops that called out Scott Dixon, the pre-race favourite on pole, another wise 40-year-old, the reigning champion. He actually ran out of fuel because when the yellow caution goes out in America, you can't pit unless you pay a penalty of going to the back of the field. And so he stayed out. Then he actually ran out of fuel. They couldn't restart the engine. He lost a lap or 2, so that put Dixon out. And of course, that first yellow surprised everyone because poor Stefan Wilson, so sad. He's taken 2 years to try and get the money to come back and race in Indy after, you know, his brother died in that awful accident 3 or 4 years ago now. And Stefan still wants to race. He doesn't race at all for the rest of the year. Got the money together. And he was the first of several of them. Actually went on throughout the race. Simona de Silvestro had the same problem. The brakes aren't working. They sort of, I think, it's a bit of a tweak. They hold the pads away from the discs down the straights for the whole lap when you're running, to stop any sort of friction going on. And when you want to get them to work, sometimes the system seems to resist because even more experienced drivers had the problem later on. So poor old, you know, Stefan's pumping his pedal like mad and the flipping thing's not slowing. And eventually they punch it down through the gears, but he spun, locking up the rears and hit the wall. Was the first retirement that caused that very early yellow. So it was terrible for him. He's worked so hard to put together a package. You know, he must have been absolutely gutted. But after all that, look, there were more accidents in the pit lane. I think out on the track, we saw Graham Rahal lost a wheel coming out. He'd been the big wise guy down the back, and he was probably in a really good position to win the race, as he said afterwards. We had this big shunt. We saw Connor Daly's chances ruined by the horrendous. I mean, did you see him punt? He drop kicked Rahal's wheel over the crossbars. He would have scored 3 points in rugby.
You know why they have the fencing that goes over
so high,
so high. Crikey,
200 miles an hour. Things fly.
Yeah.
But actually, there weren't very few yellow flags on the course. But in the end, it then built up. And although you're confused in the middle of IndyCar races, it finally works out who's got their strategy right, who's got the fuel right. And we had 5 cars vying for the lead. It was a spectacular last 5 or 10 laps with the rookie Palou, this Spanish kid that's come, from the waiting room, as we call it, from Japan when he couldn't get his career going in Europe and went from Japan to IndyCar. So he was looking there to win his first, age 24. And then there's Helio Castroneves that got sacked from his team because, he was deemed a bit too old at 46. And this was his first or second race of the year. He's not doing a whole season. But they were swapping places at 220 miles an hour. And Helio was obviously the favourite for the fans who love him in NASCAR. He's Brazilian, but they've adopted him as one of their own. And came out with these amazing moves to win the race in the end. Almost helped by catching a group of back markers, because, again, you could use the slipstream of the back markers. But, I mean, it's still, nobody knows how to celebrate a win better than Helio. And, of course, the American fans, he's famous for climbing the fence. You hear a fan, climb the fence.
Spider-Man, that's what they call him.
Yeah.
He's 46. So, that's
46 years old.
No spring chicken in the racing world.
That's his 4th win now. So he's matched the top 3 for winning 4 times. He can now, the only one that can go to win 5 times, maybe. But it was great to see the youngsters out in front early on, VK and Hurton, but they faded. The Brits didn't do so well. Jack Harvey got into the top 10 for a while, but ended up 18th, and Max Chilton was 24th. So
but it's very misleading, because you can get into the top 10 if you want to burn a bit more fuel and be a bit of a young gun. So it's a bit misleading, really. It's quite confusing to follow, I'll be honest. So
a bit of a confusing race. It is a confusing race early on and in the middle, but it always builds towards the end. So you just got to live with it for a while, and then that it's going to kick off in the final few 50 miles or so.
And it certainly did, but it didn't kick off at all with NASCAR.
Well,
I know you love it, but Tiff, come on, that wasn't the most exciting race in the world.
Well, this is the trouble. Every time you're trying to promote a formula, you say, "Go and watch this." They watch it, then there's a bad race. Oh no, then they never watch again. It was the 600 mile, the longest race of the year. And this was the race that, famous in the past, some drivers used to do the Indy 500, then fly in jets and do the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte. I mean, nobody does that these days, but a few drivers have done that, succeeded. But the only consolation was that Kyle Larson, the number 5, the Needell favourite, dominated, really. And after a couple of second places, but he dominated before, this time it came true. And he clicked up. They've broken the Petty Enterprise record for wins now. The Hendrick Motorsport team, who Carl runs for, who's got such good form. They had 3 cars that are in the top 10. So that they won the biggest, the most winningest team. So
they know how to monetize over there in terms of advertising and sponsorship, don't they? Would you maybe call yourself Tiff Thrifty Car Rentals Nadell or something? For a bit of extra money.
So 2 not brilliant races in America, but just the way they do their races, the razzmatazz, which is why, the Daytona 500, the Indy 500, they're just amazing days of entertainment.
I agree. And talking of entertainment, we're going to leave the best to last, which is actually you racing. But next up, the entertainment Extreme E, which was the Ocean Rally? No, what do they call it? The
Ocean Prix. Ocean Prix. Don't use the word Prix. Oh, it was more spectacular. It was like a load of beach buggies. Kids in the 60s. Let's go surfing out. Everybody's surfing out, bouncing there. And all that commentators, it's just wall-to-wall commentary, which seems to be the modern style that producers seem to want, whereas I was told by the BBC when I was working with Murray Walker, with the voice would come through, let the pictures do the talking, don't talk for a while. We're all watching it. But they're bang on hyperdrive. Every time hyperdrive. He's going for his hyperdrive down the beach. I think he's gone for who's going hyperdrive. The most exciting thing was who used their hyperdrive to get into the first corner, and then, as usual, they couldn't overtake. He's going to take the alternative route, but in motorsport, you all know there's only one quick route. There's one.
And as soon as they take the alternative route and then they
lose more ground.
They're so far behind.
There were a few muscly overtakes. There was a bit of door banging.
But exactly. But it's not a contact sport, and they're pushing against each other and touching each other, and just because there's a way to go, and
they break. So.
It looks spectacular, but I couldn't understand as well. They had the photo opportunity at the beginning. So for those who don't know, it's all about being carbon neutral and supporting the planet, which is great, fantastic.
Yeah, and drawing attention to modern day issues, which is a good cause, but they hype it up too much.
And then at the beginning, when they had the sort of photo opportunity with all the different drivers filling their bags full of ocean rubbish, but then throughout the whole weekend, they continue to show the same shots of rubbish all over the beach. Clean it up before the race, and then make a big song and dance about it. Did you see that? I couldn't believe how much rubbish was on the beach.
I was times 30 at this stage. It was late last night when I thought I'd better check it out. I zizzed through. I don't know how I missed all the recordings. Apparently the best race was the three fighting for the bottom three positions, where Katie Munnings was involved in. There's quite a bit of door banging in that one. So I missed that race. But of course, the final, there was a door banging at turn one, and one broke, and another went up the sandbag and broke their wheels. We had a red flag situation. Had to be restarted after the driver change. So it's just Molly Taylor. Rosberg wins again, is the headline. Molly Taylor, this Australian rally driver, is really quick, and Johan Kristoffersen won again. I don't know, where are they next? I don't know. Where's my list?
I don't know. They look, for me, the takeaway is they look fantastic. I think it could be spectacular. I think if it was more like rallycross, some jumps and stuff like that, I think it'd be
well, then watch rallycross.
Yeah, but
they bounce around. They do bounce around. They look very bouncy beach buggy. No more events till August. I don't know when it is. August the 29th now. I don't know which one that is.
They're going to Antarctica. That's where they're going next.
Oh, that's the next one, is it?
Yeah. So they've got a bit of a long trek on their ship. You know the thing. Let me tell you. I don't want to be negative. I'm not a negative person at all, but it just doesn't do it for me. I've given it a bit of a chance, and I will keep watching it. The thing for me, these pit stops. As a driver, you drive into a pit stop and safety is paramount, but they're braking to 30 kilometers an hour. I think like 150 meters before. It must be excruciating for the drivers.
It's like coming into a pit lane and having a 60 kilometers. I understand. I think for me, it's the overhype that actually spoils it. The two commentators just banging in drama words. At the beginning, they said, "Oh, he's making sure he keeps all four wheels in a straight line because that's best for traction." Well, I think everybody knows if you start with lock on, it's not going to be a good start. They were just stating the obvious and shouting it, and who's going for the hyperdrive and the alternative strategy, and just relax. There's great footage. It looks fun. It's beach buggies, it's sand. It is spectacular in a certain way, but just chill out on it a bit.
I don't mind the commentary.
More fans.
I don't mind the commentary. I'm not a big fan of the branding, the hyperdrive, and it's very American and it's very bit cheesy for us old-fashioned folk.
Yes, I'm afraid so.
Speaking of old-fashioned. Speaking of old-fashioned, let's move on to some proper racing with my old-fashioned mate Tiff Needell at Brands Hatch. Well done, mate. That's a good old weekend.
I'm still a bit worn out. We had a Ford Cortina on Saturday, which we climbed up to 10th at a great good race in that. And then TVR was the best race, really. I was in this TVR Tuscan. We've got not Tuscan TVR. I don't know what the model is. The old one, Grand Tourer. Grand Tourer. Yeah, but it's a 1.5 hour race. I had to do 45 minutes, Paul.
That's hard work.
I was being caught by the other TVR that normally beats us, and all the crew, I had them all doing the old go on fast. I want to slow down.
So you just had a pit. You had a pit board. You didn't have audio.
No, radios. But I had the sort of plus 6 seconds, plus 5 seconds. So I knew he's catching me. I didn't need them whirling their hands. I stumbled out of the car.
And you did the Indy circuit at Brands?
No, Grand Prix circuit. It's a wonderful circuit. That's the other joy of why I go to that event. There's another one at the end of July. I mean, the track's the best track to drive around in the world almost, especially those older cars. It's got high-speed corner. It's got every type of corner. You can overtake, and it's just a fabulous track to have the pleasure and the honour. I mean, luckily, my car owner is John Spears. I have to thank him so much. He's got this fleet of cars that he invites me to co-drive in the 1 hour races and the 1.5 hour races.
Sorry, what was the third race?
Then about only an hour after I'd bored myself out of the TVR, I had to do half an hour in the Can-Am McLaren M1B. Of course. Which is my favourite car of the stable, really, because I like being open. I prefer to be open-headed, but little single-seaters. I'm out there in this '66 Can-Am car with a 500 horsepower Chevy right behind me, and just drifting it. And luckily, there's only one other car in the pre-66 class, and he actually got ahead of us at the pit stop. It was a chaos. The pace car came out just when I was pit stopping. So once I managed to overtake him to take the lead of the class, I could back off and breathe a little. My arms are hanging off because the steering was a bit heavy. So I've got to go down the gym now. We're at Thruxton in 2 weeks' time when we're doing 4 races. I mean, his E-Type Jaguar, his Lister Nobly, the Cortina and the Capri.
I'll be there cheering you on.
But I mean, great crowd as well. Great crowd. South Bank at Brands Hatch filled with hooting cars and waving people in the glorious sunshine. And it was a wonderful weekend.
Brilliant. And the Can-Am always makes me laugh because I'm sure most people listening to this, a very modest amount of listeners, thank you for listening, will know that it's open, and you've got these huge like broomsticks for the mirrors.
Yeah.
They must vibrate so much. Can you actually?
They're quite good. They're quite good. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And Brands Hatch, can't leave Brands Hatch without saying about Paddock, which is the first corner. I think is one of the best corners ever. I haven't had the pleasure of driving many tracks, but so at the end of the start-finish straight, it then goes around to the right, but it dips so much.
Down,
it's a real ballsy corner, isn't it? I guess once you get it, you get it. But it is good stuff. So that's it, Tiff. Well done. I'm very pleased for you on that one. And next week we got Formula 1 again and Formula 2 in Baku. What do you think?
A good track, Baku. Yeah. I like Azerbaijan, that huge long straight and the scenic blast through the villas, you know. So it's a very exciting track, which turns up some surprises sometimes. So looking forward to that, especially F2 round there is usually pretty epic. Yeah, of course, they've got these 2 reverse grids, which I don't like in F2, but round there, because of the big straight, there's going to be a lot of overtaking going on, I think, in the first 2 F2 races. So it'll provide the drama that they seem to want. Whereas, of course, for me, it's down to the drivers getting their super license points. But yeah, it's good stuff at Baku. World Rally Championship goes off to Italy, where again, we won't see much on telly, but unless you're a devoted fan and go to WRC Live. And so they're there. MotoGP's racing again, Barcelona.
Yep. So
that's good for the bikers. They've got 2 consecutive weekends. And NASCAR back on the road courses, back at Sonoma in California. They're doing more road courses in NASCAR, which is quite fun, and they're usually great around there, leaping over the curbs in their great big NASCARs. So once again, plenty of worldwide motorsport entertainment for us to catch up with next Monday night.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Thanks for joining us as always. And see you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.